A seismic shift in the way homes are bought and sold is happening August 17th. Antitrust authorities forced the National Association of Realtors to loosen its grip on agent commissions, meaning that standard 6% commission is effectively over. So joining me now are real estate agents and experts, Emmy Crawford and Carrie Lynn Angel of Coldwell Banker Realty Gundaker. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
There's really a lot of information out there to grasp. At the end of the day, what does this mean for the homeowner and the home buyer? And you.
So I would say the biggest change in the with this antitrust lawsuit was just transparency. It's not really going to change the way that we practice, and it breaks down what a buyer is going to pay and what a seller is going to pay in the overall commission structure. So typically what would have happened was we would go on a listing call and we would talk to the seller about the commission that was going to be paid. Coldwell Banker years ago, probably 15 years ago, changed its listing agreement to break out the buyer's agency, what we were going to pay out a buyer's agent. So if it was a 6% listing, you would put 2.7% to the buyer's agent. Not all companies did that across the nation, and what happened was there was a lawsuit, and what it was meant to do was to make that transparency and give the seller the option of whether or not they wanted to pay out the buyer's agent, where before it was just kind of worked into the
assumed that everyone would get paid,
right?
Okay, so now it's like the assumption is that you might not want to pay the seller's agent.
Well,
what does that mean though if you want to see a house, whether it's an open house or if you want to see a private or I guess privately?
As a home buyers, if you want to see, if you want to go to an open house, there's nothing changed. There's no cost involved in going to see an open house. But if you want to view a home privately, then now buyers are required to sign an agreement with their realtor or the agent before seeing that home. So that's one of the big changes for the realtors and home buyers.
So what does that really look like? Because it sounds like more paperwork than anything.
It is, yes. We have seen more paperwork, a lot of forms that being changed. So yeah, we're working through all of this, and
a lot of what we did in the last 5-10 years, we went digital on almost everything. We used to have big files of paper, and we got away from that, and it's almost like it's making us work backwards. As now we're printing out stacks of paper so that we can, if someone calls and wants to see a house, we have to get our paper out of the back of our car.
Well, do you see any pros to this at all?
I would say the pros would be there's more disclosure, more transparency between realtors and clients. So before, a lot of buyers, sellers, a home seller may not be actually involved in the process of whether they want to, compensate the buyer's agent or not, and how much would that be? What is the payout commission? Now the sellers have more voice, not more voice, but more involved in that and more input in that process of what is the commission for the seller's agents and what is the commission or payout for the buyer's agent.
Gotcha. But what happens if someone says, I don't want to pay my seller's agent, or I don't want to pay, what happens?
They do have that option, right?
So the seller has an option, but the downside to that is on our buyer's agency agreement, there's a box that is checked that if a buyer's already paying a lot of fees, right? You're paying your closing costs, you're paying your down payment, you're paying your insurance ahead of time, your escrows, there's title fees. And a lot of them have saved and saved and saved to get to the point where they could buy a house. And now they don't have the money to be able to pay that commission, right? So they have a box that says, don't show me any houses that I'm going to have to pay that commission. I can't afford it. Wow. And so unfortunately, if a seller isn't wanting to pay commission, it is highly likely that they're going to make their buyer pool a lot smaller.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So what is the advantage, of
Right.
course, of making sure that everyone's getting paid on both sides?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're gonna
So
have their
and
houses shown.
yeah, they have the option. Some people might have the money to go ahead and pay the buyer's agent, but I haven't experienced on my own on my listing side. I haven't experienced any of my sellers that aren't willing to offer that to a buyer's agent.
Okay.
Yeah, personally, I have the same experience too. None of my seller would say, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. 90%, more than 90% of home buyers are working with an agent. So do you want to pay, bring those buyers in or not?
Yeah.
And that's where the competition. You have to look at all the homes that sell in the areas that pay now, giving compensation to the buyer's agent. And now if your home's not have a payout, then you have a much smaller pool of buyers.
But the intent was
Right.
that maybe it would bring down home prices for, maybe first-time home buyers or other home buyers. But you're saying it's probably not going to do that.
That's the law of supply and demand, though.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, everything changed during COVID, where people weren't able to go to their offices, so they transitioned their homes into a home office, and they put all of this money into their homes, and now they're working from there, and they don't. It's caused kind of a supply and demand problem where now that's their office and their home, and they're not super excited to change both at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your pain points, your early pain points that you've seen?
I would say the last. Well, change is always, takes some time to adjust it to. I guess our pain points would be a lot of paperwork has been, we have to get used to changes in paperwork. And one simple thing is that, before on the multiple listing services, MLS, usually before go showing a house, book a showing for a home, you would see what is the payout, are you going to be, as a buyer's agent, are we going to be compensated, and what is that number looking like? But now those numbers are not it's not showing.
Sure.
And so we don't know. We will have to personally make that phone call or spend time to find out what will be the compensation. And then we'll talk to the buyers, and look at the buyer's agreement to see what can we do also. And then that's where more conversations, more discussion will have to happen between us and clients.
Yeah, and I would also piggyback on that and just say I feel like the biggest pain point for us is that not all agencies are educated the same way, and they are also not handling this in the same way. Some are there's new forms that come out. Some agencies decide they don't want those forms and that you're just going to have to negotiate it on the contract, where others will have an addendum that is very specific and make it so that you just checked one little box on the contract, and it makes it really easy. So I would say it's more of the rollout of it. There was so much last minute. There was just so many last-minute changes, even through the lawyers of NAR and the St. Louis Association of Realtors, and they all had their hands in it, and so they were just trying to figure out the best and easiest solution. But it was in such a short time frame to change an industry that has been around for 100 years.
I was going to say a century.
I mean, I guess that would be it. It would just be trying to figure out how each different agency is handling it, so that you know how to prepare yourself best when you're writing up an offer in order to represent your buyer the best you can.
And so at the end of the day, though, I think a lot of people want to know, how will this affect closing costs in general?
So the way I would say it would affect closing costs is only if the buyer ends up having to pay their commission. Other than that, it doesn't really affect the closing cost.
Right. Yeah.
And so then, okay, so just, there's so much, right? So what happens if buyers really, don't end up paying the realtor's compensation? What does that look like for them? Do they have to have a lawyer at that point, or do they have to do any extra steps? Or do you not know? I'm putting you on the spot,
Well, no, I think that we're still working that out.
Yeah,
but that I think some of that is if the buyer knows that if they can't afford that, that is why on the buyer's agency, it gives them the option not to even see those houses.
Right.
Exactly.
They're being realistic about what that will look like for them before they get there. And I think that's our job also as a buyer's agent, is to really educate what that looks like and helping them navigate. Which I will say, I'm going to go back and change my answer a little bit as far as what is a pro. It has, I will say this has, I think, helped buyer's agents prepare a better presentation for their buyer's agents so that we're more thorough in explaining the process.
Gotcha. Okay, so long term, will this be a good move? What do you think?
Well, long term, it's the change is just starting.
Yeah.
And, August 17, as we see, is officially today. So it's coming soon. We don't know exactly the long term yet, but I would say I agree that there's more education. And then it always has been the focus in our business too, especially to first-time home buyers. People who first time start searching for a home, and now in addition to what all of the home criteria or price and closing costs, they will have to think about, am I able to, can I afford to pay my agents if there's a listing that don't have a compensation? And then these all comes down to, disclosure and additional discussion, education to our clients.
Well, it's so important to have. Just being a home buyer and a home seller, I would never want to do that on my own. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and hopefully long term, it will be a good move or something, because otherwise, what are we doing this for? But thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Carrie Lynn, thank you.
Thank you for having us.